Okay, so today I'm going to talk to you guys about TEK 8F, which says to describe the responses to the Vietnam War, such as the draft, the 26th Amendment, the role of the media, the credibility gap, the silent majority, and the anti-war movement. Okay, so first off with the draft. So the draft actually started before Vietnam. It started in 1940, before we were even involved in World War II. But in Vietnam, it started to get a lot more flack and a lot more negative feedback from the people, mostly because people found that the men who were being drafted tended to be more of the lower economic, lower education boys. And I say boys because whenever you're drafted, it's between the ages of 18 to 26. Like, these are young kids getting drafted and sent off across the world to another country to fight. It basically got a lot of negative feedback. People were protesting it, and eventually it was ended in January of 1973, about 2 years before the war actually ended. Okay, so next is the 26th Amendment, and this was actually the way that all of you guys, whenever you turn seniors and you turn the age of 18, you get to vote, and it's all because of the 26th Amendment, because before then, you had to wait until you were 21 to vote, but we officially passed the 26th Amendment, lowering the voting age to 18, and that really helped those boys that were getting drafted. Really, it gave them a space to be vocal about their opinions and kind of try to change the policies and have a foot in politics, because now they have the right to vote. Okay, so the media. The media played a massive role in Vietnam War. This is something like you're gonna start to see why Vietnam was so massive, because we had media over in Vietnam. This was our first war that we were fighting where we actually had camera crews there showing the American public at home in their living rooms on their TV what exactly the boys were doing in the war. And it really started to show, like, the government can't keep its secrets anymore. Like, the government can't tell us, oh, we're not going to go bomb Cambodia, when we actually have camera crews in Cambodia seeing that we have already bombed Cambodia. So with the camera crews being in Vietnam and us being able to see firsthand what is actually happening, this started what's called the credibility gap. And this is basically just the public growing skeptical of President, specifically Lyndon B. Johnson, and just their handling of the Vietnam War. Are they actually doing what they should be doing? Should we even be there in the first place? Are they making the best choices? That kind of stuff. Okay, so silent majority. This term actually came from President Nixon, and we already know that there was a lot of people speaking out against the war and out against the government. But President Nixon, it could be a sense of propaganda, but he was trying to make it seem as if it wasn't the majority of Americans who were against the war, but there was what was the silent majority that basically meant the majority of Americans are actually not saying anything. They're not coming out to support or go against it. They're just minding their own business, staying silent. There's no real way of knowing, that I could find at least, to prove whether or not the majority of Americans during this time period actually did or did not support the war. There wasn't like an official poll where every single American decided, like, I support the war or I don't support the war. So we really don't know. It's basically would have to be like a judgment call on your own, doing your own research to see who, if you think the majority felt like they supported it or didn't support it. It'd be up to your research. Okay, so finally we're talking about the anti-war movement. So it's kind of been building up to this. Obviously, we're seeing a lot through the past few terms that we've looked at. A lot of people are gaining this mistrust and dislike for the war, and it was generally just called the anti-war movement. This was shown in protests, demonstrations, marches, sit-ins, teach-ins. A lot of it focused on college campuses, but the anti-war movement, people that were opposing the war were often known as like doves, and people who supported the war would be called hawks. And basically the war, people just started to gain like a mistrust of the government. Before the Vietnam War, people kind of just took whatever the government said and was like, okay, the government, we support them, like they're looking out for what's best for the country, they're not gonna lie to us, that kind of stuff. And this is one of the reasons why I love the Vietnam War so much and I love studying this time period, is because this is whenever Americans start to question the government. They start to realize, I think the government might not actually be looking out for the best for all Americans, and they might not be just doing what's best for the world and what's best for the nation. They might actually be lying to us. And it goes back to like the media. We actually got to see how they were telling us, no, we're not going to bomb Cambodia and Laos. But actually we see from CBS and ABC and NBC, these news channels and stations that are over in Vietnam, we are actually seeing, no, they are dropping bombs. They're lying to us. And it really, we got to see firsthand the atrocities. We were dropping Agent Orange on Vietnam, and innocent babies and children are getting killed by it. There's a really famous photo of a little girl who she's running down a road and she's completely naked, and her skin, it's just like dripping off, and she's just burned and scarred from this Agent Orange, and it's horrible. And so Americans are seeing this stuff that's happening, and so we started seeing a lot more people being vocal about not full-heartedly trusting the government, going against them, and using that First Amendment right to protest what you find that you're passionate about. The most famous of all of the, well, maybe not the most famous, but I would actually say it's most famous anti-war movement protest. It definitely is the thing that intensified the anti-war movement, and that was the Kent State protest that eventually turned into the Kent State shootings. So this was in Kent, Ohio, college campus. Kids like 18 to 24, maybe 25, they're just protesting the bombings of Cambodia, and they got a little out of hand, and the National Guard was there. The National Guard started shooting on the students, and 4 of them died. This really intensified the anti-war movement, because now people are seeing, this is people getting killed here in our country. Not just that, but it's like kids, it's young college students being killed for protesting the war, for using their First Amendment right. And so it started to be that really solidifying moment for the anti-war movement that pushed it forward so much.